Good evening, welcome. Please take a moment and subscribe or share or like. We appreciate it. So we are starting on the laws of Sefiras Haomer, the laws that apply to this era that we're in, between Sukkot and Shavuos, between Pesach and Shavuos. It's known as Sefiras Haomer. And there are two elements that we're going to cover. We're using Kitzer Shulchan Aruch, the summary of the Code of Jewish Law, and a few other sources that I will mention. But we're covering two general aspects. Number one is about the counting of Sefira. It's a mitzvah to count. We're going to discuss those laws, how, what, when, who, and so on. And then things that pertain to this era between Pesach and Shavuos, which are some restrictions and some things that we need to know in connection to this time. But let's get right into it. Siman Kuf Chaf Aleph, it's the section 121, 120, and it's the laws of Sefiras Haomer, V'imei HaSefira, and the days of Sefira. We have here 11 paragraphs. Number one, B'leil Sheni, in the second night of Pesach, we begin counting Sefiras Haomer. Now, Sefiras Haomer is essentially a count of how many days do we have to go until Shavuos. Shavuos is the holiday when we receive the Torah. We're going to count how many days left. There are 49 days from second night of Pesach all the way until Shavuos. It's specifically the second night because Torah says the day after the Shabbos, which means the day after the first day of the holiday, you should count. And therefore, every night we count. It's also reminiscent when the Jewish people left Egypt, they were told that you are going to receive the Torah on Har Sinai. And they were excited about this gift. So they started to count. They started to get ready. They started to prepare, both practically and on a spiritual level, they're going to prepare themselves. And every day to get a little bit better than they were before. We have to remember that when they left Mitzrayim, they were in a very impure state, 49th level or 49th gate of impurity. And what was required of the Jewish people at the time was to rise above, get out of that impurity, that tumah that they were in, to be ready to receive the Torah. And this is really what they were occupied with. Now we also count till Shavuos, but it's also a time that we better ourselves and we try to improve and grow in our midas, in our characteristics, how we behave, and so on, becoming better people as we get closer to Shavuos. Now, the counting that's done is done standing, and the mitzvah is to count right when the beginning of the night occurs. Now, if you didn't do it right away, you're allowed to do it all night until morning, but it's best to do it as soon as it gets dark outside. In Shul, hopefully we'll be there soon, we count right after, in Friday night, on Shabbos or Yontif, before Elenu. And when it comes to Mitzvah Shabbos, where we wait a little bit longer than usual, we count it after that. But the point is that we do it at the beginning of the night, at the end of Ma'ariv, we make this bracha and we count Sefiras Haomer. What happens if somebody forgot? You're supposed to count Sefira every night, and he forgot to do it, and now it's already the morning. What do you do? So the halacha is that the next morning you count, but do it without a bracha. So let's say yesterday was the second night of Sefira, as an example, and I forgot to count the Sefira, and I realized only in the morning, so I would count two during the day without a bracha, and then when the night comes, and it's the third night, I would count night three, and so on. Now, if you're not sure if you forgot or not, if you counted or not, so I'm not sure that I forgot. It's now the next night, okay? And I say, did I count last night or not? If I'm unsure, I could still assume that I did and start counting tonight regularly. If I know that I forgot last night, then I can't make a bracha tonight. If I'm not sure if I counted last night, then I could assume that I did, and I count tonight. Now, this is very different from what we usually say. When it comes to other halachas, like davening for rain in the right time, or now we daven for dew instead of rain, the various different things, the first 30 days, if you're not sure if you did the right thing or not, we assume that you're used to saying it the right way, the old way, and if you're not sure, you're probably messed up, and therefore you have to, in certain cases, you have to say the davening again. Because for 30 days, that's the time that it takes for a person to change that habit, which is an interesting concept in general, but it takes 30 days to change the habit of what you're used to saying. But by Sefira, we say that if you're not sure if you counted yesterday, assume that you did, and you can count tonight with a bracha. Now, if someone completely forgot, you know that you didn't count last night, and you want to count, and you only realize tonight, you can continue counting, but without a bracha. There are certain things that we should do to make sure that we don't mess up and say the wrong number or count by mistake, and then you can't make with a bracha. These are very important halachas. Someone asks you tonight, what's the Sefira number? I want to count. What should I count? The answer is yesterday was 9 or 10 or whatever. Don't give the correct number of tonight. Say yesterday was. Because if you say tonight is, that's as if you're counting. And if you do it without a bracha, you have a problem. Now you're just counting. Now, before you make the bracha, lichatchila, the best way of doing it is know in advance what number tonight is. If it's 10, then know that it's 10. And say the bracha knowing what you're going to count. That's the best way to do it. Like anything else. You're about to make a bracha on an apple. You have to know what bracha this is, and it's a ha'etz bracha, and not in the middle of the bracha you say baruch atah, and you're trying to hear what other people make, what bracha they're making. Know the bracha that you're saying before you start. If, b'di'evid, you did not know in advance what number is tonight, you're in shul, and you start making the bracha, and you're relying on the fact that you'll hear the person next to you what number it is, and then you said it. So, hey, he said 6, I said 6. It's still okay. You fulfill the mitzvah, the bracha is fine, but it's not the preferred way of doing it. You should know in advance what you are saying the bracha on. Not only that, but you assumed that tonight was the night number 4. And then tomorrow, then you started to count, you made the bracha, you're about to say the number, and you heard your friend say 5. Whoops, it's 5. So you say 5 instead of 4. You planned on saying 4, you made the bracha already, and now it's still okay because you said the right one and you don't have to make a bracha again. What happens if it's the 5th night and you said 6 by mistake? Whatever, you said the wrong number. If you remembered right away, then just fix it. You don't have to make a bracha again. So you said 5, 6. If it took you a while, then you notice that you made the wrong bracha, the wrong number, you make a bracha again and you count the right way, as long as it's still the night. Okay, that's in summary the halachas of counting Sefira. It goes on for 49 nights, and it ends with the holiday of Shavuos. Let's spend a few minutes discussing the era that we're in between Pesach and Shavuos. The Shulchan Aruch tells us that between Pesach and Shavuos, the students of Rabbi Akiva passed away. Rabbi Akiva had 24,000 students. It's fascinating because he only started learning Torah when he was 40 years old. So at 40, he didn't even know how to read Aleph Beis, the Hebrew alphabet. And he started from 0, which is a very powerful lesson in its own right. But he started learning, and he started to learn how to read, and then Chumash, then Mishnah, and so on. And not only was he learning himself, but then he became a great teacher, and he had students, and more students, and 12,000 became 24,000. And here he is, the leader of the Jewish people at the time, with 24,000 students. Powerful concept. Never too late to start learning. But unfortunately, there was a plague during this era between Pesach and Shavuos, and 24,000 of his students passed away. And therefore, we have certain halachas, certain laws, restrictions during this time that we're not allowed to get married, no weddings, and no haircuts. Now, the different opinions, Sephardim, Ashkenazim, And among those, there's different opinions. When exactly did this occur? Is it the full time? Is it from Pesach until Lag BaOmer? Or is it from the beginning of Iyar to Lag BaOmer? Is it from Lag BaOmer and on? Different opinions. So the Chabad custom is that we do the whole thing from Pesach till Shavuos. We're careful, but there are different opinions, and each community should do according to their opinion of when you keep the Sefira rules or restrictions. So no weddings, no haircuts, no listening to music, and it's really a time to focus on the idea of Avas Yisrael. Now, the idea of Avas Yisrael, of loving one another and loving your fellow like yourself, is a great principle of the Torah. Rabbi Akiva, who his students passed away, is the one that said it. But the idea is to look out and care for others. I even saw in a sefer today, it says that a person should not hit the children. Back in the day, today doesn't exist anymore, but back in the day there were such disciplinary concepts of spanking. Not just parents to children, but teachers to students. In the classroom, behind the teacher, there was hanging a whip or a stick. And it was a reminder that if you misbehave, you get a whack. And halacha brings that during this time of Sefira, you should be extra careful, don't hit your children. Even if it's for disciplinary purposes, and you're doing it out of love, and you only mean the child's good, don't hit them during this time. Because you have to have extra Avos Yisrael. The obvious question is, you have to have extra Avos Yisrael, and Rabbi Akiva is the person. Sorry, let's go a step further. Why do we have to have extra Avos Yisrael? Because the reason why the students of Rabbi Akiva passed away, 24,000 of them, during this era, is because they nohagu kaved zeh bazeh. The students of Rabbi Akiva did not give each other the proper honor, the proper respect that they should have during this time. And in general, the way they behaved with one another. And as a result, they passed away. Now the question is, your teacher is Rabbi Akiva. Now Akiva has a teaching. He says that loving your fellow like yourself is not just an idea, it's not just a mitzvah, it's not just a nice thing to do, but it's klal gadol b'Torah. It's a great principle in the Torah. It's something which is central to Yiddishkeit. And it's very important. So how is it that his students lack in that area? If it's not what he focused on, if this teacher didn't really talk about this all the time, or he didn't feel that this is central to Torah, not that it's not a mitzvah, but he didn't feel that it was central, okay, so they were good in other areas. Still a question. But here you have a teacher who his banner, his reason to et is that loving your fellow like yourself is a klal gadol b'Torah, and he's missing it. His students, not him, but his students die in a plague because they weren't honoring one another. What's happening here? What did they learn from their teacher? So I want to share two answers. Number one, they definitely loved one another. Okay, it wasn't that they were mean. It wasn't they were not nice to one another. They actually had a lot of love for one another. Out of the love that they had, they wanted to make sure that the other person understands their teacher the correct way. Let's take a modern day example. You're having an argument with somebody about politics. Right versus left, blue versus red, whatever it is. So you're fighting, you're arguing, and it's very heated. And you're very passionate about your opinion. To the extent that there's a little bit feeling of maybe distaste, to put it mildly, towards the one that disagrees with you. What if we reversed it a little bit? It's not that you're upset at them, but you really feel bad that they don't understand your interpretation or your opinion, and they're misled. So because I love you so much, I don't want you to misunderstand or to be misguided. I am with my whole heart and soul, not sparing anything. My gloves are off, and I'm just going right at you because I want to help you. It's not very respectful, okay? And sometimes out of love, out of the need to help the other person, you don't give them their space. You don't give them the respect that they need. And it has negative results. That's really what Rabbi Akiva's students were about. Of course they loved each other. It's because they loved each other, that's why it came out that way. It wasn't a lack or a problem on its own. Excuse me. That's number one. Number two, we have to understand that we're dealing with tzaddikim. We're dealing with holy, righteous people. And someone that's very, very holy, and someone that's a tzaddik, is held to the nth degree. So regular people, when you make a mistake, when you do something wrong, you're held accountable to a certain extent. If it was on purpose, if it was by mistake, did you do it in a big way, in a small way? What exactly did you transgress? It matters what you're dealing with. However, if you're dealing with a tzaddik, someone that's a very great holy person, someone that's a role model for others, someone that is holy, spiritual, perfect, if you will, then he's held very, very accountable. You make a small mistake, and all of a sudden there's punishment involved. Rabbi Akiva's students weren't bad, but for people of their stature, disciples of, Rabbi Akiva, and such great people, they should have behaved even nicer to one another. So let's not think for a second that they were bad, or it was political, or they were mean. They were nice. Out of love for one another, they were imposing their opinion from a good place, good intentions. But that's what brought about. So first of all, the idea of loving someone, we have to keep this in mind, that when you love somebody, you have to give them their space and respect, and you can't just impose your opinion on them, even though you think it's better for them. Because if they don't think it's better for them now, you're doing them a disservice. In other words, you're not, the term that's used in Gemara is le'nohagu kavod. They didn't show respect for one another. It's disrespectful to impose on the other person your opinion, even though you mean well. It's very different than hurting somebody or being mean to somebody, but it's not a good thing to do. And secondly, is you're dealing with people that are held to a very, very great level, like Moshe Rabbeinu. Why was he denied entry into Eretz Yisrael? Because he hit a rock? Big deal. He was trying to give the Jewish people water. It didn't mean bad. But for someone from Moshe Rabbeinu's level, and people are looking at him, and people are learning from him, and he's expected to be perfect. The highest level, even a small infraction is a mess up, right? If you have a small scratch on a table, big deal. But if you have a brand new table and it's gorgeous and it's a very, very expensive type, one scratch lowers the value tremendously. Think used car versus brand new car. The used car with an extra scratch, big deal. It's only a scratch. If it was a smash, you would care. But if it's a brand new car, you just drove it off the lot and then you have a scratch, it matters. Just to clarify that, Rabbi Akiva's students were not bad to one another, or heaven forbid, hurtful or mean. Okay. But back to our halacha. So we don't do weddings, we don't do music, we don't do haircuts during this time between Pesach and Shavuos. There's a few exceptions. For example, a engagement party without music is allowed. You shouldn't delay getting engaged because of this time. It's not a bad time. Just certain things we don't do, so we shouldn't have the special joy or rejoicing at that time. And obviously it comes to a bris, you don't delay, and so on. Generally speaking, once it gets dark outside and you could count Sefira, you should not do any work or eat. I might even count the Sefira count. Don't delay it. I want to share something that I saw in a Sefer in Notik Gavriel. He brings beautifully that when it rains between Pesach and Shavuos, it's a good sign or a good thing for health. Normally, rain is blessing, but rain at the wrong time is the opposite of blessing. Between Pesach and Shavuos, although we just switched from davening for rain and we now daven for dew, when it rains, it's very good for health. And he brings that there are certain Rebbes who, when it rained between Pesach and Shavuos, in the month of Iyar, they would go outside and literally open their mouth and get some of the rain, because it was healing and it has a health component to it, rain that rains in this time. So we're in an era between Pesach and Shavuos. We have restrictions of celebrating and being very joyful because of certain things that happened historically. But at the same time, we are, I shouldn't say not being joyful. Certain things we don't do, like haircuts, weddings, and music. You still have to be happy. You always have to serve Hashem with joy. And we increase in our Ahavas Yisrael and our love for one another, our care and respect for one another. And it's also a time of Iyar, which is Ani Hashem Reifecha, I am Hashem, your healer, which is the concept, obviously, of health. Hashem should help that everyone that needs healing should have the healing, and everyone that needs to be blessed. All good things should be safe and good, and of course, an end to this virus. Thanks for joining, and have a wonderful evening. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you.